After Caspian had placed Win on his bed, he made his way to the office and settled down on the couch. He tried to sleep, but his mind was filled with a whirlwind of thoughts. Win, his father, and the upcoming jewelry conference in South Korea were all competing for his attention. He needed rest, especially considering he was scheduled to travel the next day, but Win's reckless behavior weighed on his mind. How could she get so drunk and carelessly enter just any car? It wasn't his responsibility, yet he felt compelled to give her a stern warning. She needed to be more careful.
Sir, did you sleep here, sir?
What time is it? What's on my schedule today?
Just past 7, sir. As for your schedule, you have a meeting with the marketing department at 8:30.
Kaisen informed him.
Also, your father wishes to meet with you at 11 a.m.
At what?
He didn't specify, sir.
Kaisen replied.
All right.
Caspian sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair.
As Win arrived at the office.
Not yet, sir.
Kaisen responded.
Should I tell her to come see you when she does?
Caspian shook his head and added as the assistant left his office.
Thank you, Kaisen.
He would send her a message instead. He emailed her to let her know he had spent the night at the office and that she should resume work today. As Caspian got up, he retrieved a spare toothbrush and clothing he kept in the office for such occasions. As he dressed and prepared for the day, he briefly considered the idea of placing a bed in his office for nights like this. A quiet chuckle escaped him as he dismissed the thought. It was a bit much.
Win.
Anna yelled excitedly as she walked into the office with Luke and saw the other woman at her desk.
Good morning, Luke, Anna.
Win greeted as she stood up and enveloped Anna in a big hug.
How are you feeling now?
Anna asked with smiling eyes.
Hungover?
Win admitted, groaning, her head was pounding, and it would take a miracle for her to get through the day.
Giselle invited me to a party last night, and I might have drunk more than I can handle.
Anna laughed and sat on the edge of Win's desk.
Partying with Giselle?
I was surprised too.
At that moment, Olivia entered the office.
Good morning, Olivia.
Win called out in greeting, but the other woman didn't pay her any attention. Win looked at Anna.
Did something happen to her?
Shrugging her shoulders, Anna stood up from Win's desk.
She's been in a good mood lately. She even brought a cake for her birthday 3 days ago.
Anna offered.
Really? I didn't know that.
Well, you weren't at work. Apart from the hangover, you're fine, right? Win nodded and smiled at her friend. She thought about going to ask Olivia if something was wrong, but the woman was about to enter Jerry's office. She made a mental note to ask her later. Also about Caspian. Would it be right to pretend nothing happened or to go thank him? She had already acted unprofessionally enough. Wouldn't it be more embarrassing if she had to face him right after? As she looked up, she saw Olivia and Jerry coming out of the latter's office, and Win wanted to go meet them when someone from behind her called her name.
Miss Win.
Her first thought was that Caspian had come to look for her, but when she turned around, it was his assistant, Kaisen. Instead, Win had only had a handful of interactions with him, and they all had been Caspian-related, so this was probably the same. She also wanted to tell him that he could call her by her name alone.
Yes?
Was this about last night?
Mr. Leroy and Miss Giselle will be going to South Korea tomorrow.
No, it wasn't. Kaisen's voice was the type that boomed when he spoke, so even when speaking normally, his voice traveled across the whole room, and everyone in the room turned to look at him.
Oh!
Win's face fell. Had Caspian asked him to come here just to tell her that? Why?
They'll be going this evening.
Okay, but what did this have to do with her? But Kaisen wasn't done speaking.
As part of a learning experience, Mr. Leroy has asked that you also come to South Korea. You'll be going with me.
Win's face twisted with confusion.
What?
She spluttered as she looked at Kaisen. Caspian wanted her to come with him. Not Olivia, not Jerry, but her. She was sure there was a look of shock on her face. But this was all surprising.
Why?
Well,
The corners of Kaisen's lips twisted into an amused smile.
like I said, it'll be a learning experience. So when you get home, pack a bag for a stay of about 5 days and be at the office by 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
Win nodded energetically. She was still stunned, but also felt giddy inside. Caspian thought of her and asked her to come. He wanted her to be there.
Thank you.
Why she was thanking him, she wasn't sure. Maybe because she was excited.
Thank you.
She added again, and she could have sworn she saw Kaisen try to hold back his laughter before he left.
Win it. Congratulations. It'll be an amazing opportunity for you to get Hanson experience and see it live.
Thank you, Olivia.
Wynn said, noticing that the woman was still carrying her bag.
Are you going somewhere?
Olivia nodded.
I have to take care of something.
She said with a strong tone and look in her eyes.
Win.
Wynn flickered her eyes straight ahead and saw Jerry gesturing for her to come. Anna caught her hand and squeezed it as she walked past, giving her a smile as she whispered.
Congratulations.
You wanted to see me?
Wynn asked as she entered Jerry's office. The man pointed at a chair and asked her to take a seat before speaking.
This is going to seem out of place, but when you go to South Korea, I need you to keep an eye on Caspian. What?
Wynne's eyes widened as her head tilted in confusion.
You want me to keep an eye on Mr. Leroy? If I may ask, why, sir?
Personal reasons.
He said simply, like that was all she needed to know.
All you have to do is watch what he does, and when you get back, tell me everything. Can I count on you, Wynn?
Olivia walked out of the office with a determined look in her gaze. Last night, her boyfriend, Nathan, had tried to take back the bag he had given her for her birthday. When she confronted him, he finally came clean about the situation surrounding it. Their conversation went a little something like this. Upon her return home, Olivia noticed Nathan pacing nervously in the living room. He barely greeted her before hastily exiting the house. About an hour later, he returned and retreated to their room. Olivia, always attentive, went to meet him to ask what the matter was. It was then that she noticed him trying to hide the bag he had gifted her, the same bag she had carried to the office every day since she received it.
What are you doing?
She asked, reaching out to take the bag from him. But Nathan hadn't been willing to let go, so a tug-of-war ensued.
Let it go, Olivia.
Nathan yelled as he continued to wrestle with the bag.
What's going on, Nathan? You gave this to me.
Olivia asked, bewildered and growing frustrated at the thought of him trying to take it back. She cherished the bag deeply, especially since it was the first gift he had given her in 4 years.
I'll get you another one. Just please let this one go.
In shock, Olivia released her grip on the bag, causing the handle to break.
What's going on, Nathan? Please tell me.
She begged, her hand on her boyfriend's shoulder even as he looked to be on the verge of tears. Nathan hesitated before finally explaining everything. Now, Olivia was on her way to the coffee shop where he worked. She had a sinking feeling that the broken bag would lead to some awkward situations. But despite her disappointment in Nathan, she wasn't going to let him face embarrassment alone. Winner returned home brimming with excitement, and even Raymond noticed the change in her mood compared to the past week.
Did something good happen at work?
He asked with an inquisitive smile, nodded, biting her lip as she tried to hide her smile.
Wait, before you spill the beans, can we talk about what happened last night / this morning?
This elicited a groan from Wynn.
I know, Ray. Lesson learned. I shouldn't have passed out in a random car. It was dumb. I know.
When?
Ray was appalled.
You entered a random car?
He hadn't known about this part.
In my defense, it was yellow and looked like a taxi.
She said, trying to defend herself, even though she knew how foolish it had been. If it hadn't turned out to be Caspian's car, something bad might have happened to her. No, it would definitely have.
I'm never drinking again. I promise.
She declared, lifting 2 fingers in Ray's face.
You're a hopeless case,
Ray said with a laugh.
Now, tell me what happened that's making you so happy.
He propped his hands on the head of the couch and looked at her eagerly, throwing her bag on the floor. Wynn flopped down next to him and rested her chin on his hands.
Well, I'm traveling for a business trip.
Traveling? That's what's making you so excited. Or is there something else?
This elicited a groan from Wynn.
Okay, fine.
She confessed as she wiggled her chin on his hands.
Caspian.
Ray froze.
Good for you, Wynn,
he said, but it wasn't sincere, and he moved his hands away, causing Wynn's chin to hit the couch hard.
Ow!
She glared at him before getting up from the couch.
Anyway, I'm going to pack my bag for tomorrow and go to bed early.
She waved at him as she entered her room, shutting the door behind her. Raymond felt conflicted as he lay down on the couch, his hands behind his head to cushion them. This wasn't good for him. If he didn't want Wynn to end up with Caspian, he had to act fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking.
As Gazelle leaned back in the seat next to him, double-checking that her seatbelt was properly fastened. Caspian had a lot on his mind. He had met with his father earlier in the afternoon, and their conversation had left him feeling frustrated. Returning to his childhood home wasn't something he did often, but Samuel had asked him to meet him there. When he arrived at the house he had lived in throughout his childhood, Caspian's father was waiting in the study, a room Caspian had been forbidden from entering when he still lived there.
Dad.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Samuel ordered, completely skipping the pleasantries, settled into the leather chair and waited for his father to speak, stared at his son for a few moments before clearing his throat.
I hear you're going to South Korea.
Should have known this was what his father wanted to talk about. He should have realized it immediately, but somehow it had slipped his mind. Also clearing his throat, he replied,
Yes, sir.
Why? Why?
It might have seemed like his father was genuinely curious, but Caspian knew better.
For this year's jewelry conference, Dad. It's being held in South Korea this year.
Looked at his son with distrust,
Is that all?
gave a curt nod.
If you're entertaining any ideas about finding your mother,
Oh, there it was. The real reason he had called Caspian over.
need I remind you that she was the one who asked for a divorce, and the thought of taking you didn't cross her mind at all.
Had heard this speech a million times. It was irritating. His father always reminded him at every chance that his mother had abandoned him, but Caspian knew better. He had lived with the man for years and knew for a fact that his mother had been sent away, and her not taking him had not been her decision. Samuel Leroy continued speaking.
Your mother, your mother.
His face twisted with distaste as he spoke about her.
I gave her everything she asked for, but she was never satisfied. It was never enough for her, which is why she decided to leave. You know that, right?
I understand.
And the only reason I married Jerry's mother was for your sake. You also know that, don't you? Sure, he knew.
Is that all, Dad?
Caspian stood up from the chair.
I've heard all you have to say, and I understand. I'll be leaving now.
Samuel grunted to show that he had heard.
It's a long flight, so I'm going to take a nap.
Gazelle told him as she put on her sleep mask and leaned back in her seat. It's a long flight, so I'm going to take a nap, Giselle told him as she put on her sleep mask and leaned back in her seat. Caspian took out his phone. He still had some work to finish up before they arrived.
It's been damaged.
Back at the coffee shop, Nathan handed the bag with the broken handle back.
This isn't how it was before, so you're going to pay for damages. You're going to pay for the bag in full.
The customer, who had left the bag, wasn't around, but she had sent someone to collect it. In the coffee shop, the three of them, the owner, Nathan, and the bag's collector, were the only occupants.
The full price. Can't I just pay for the handle?
The woman shook her head firmly.
You broke it, you buy it.
Just as Nathan was about to ask about the total amount he had to pay, Olivia stormed into the shop.
This costs around $500. It was released 3 years ago and is now out of season.
She rifled through her purse and slapped some bills on the counter.
Here. That settles things. Now, if we're done here, I'm taking my boyfriend home.
Olivia turned to Nathan.
Let's go.
Without arguing, he removed the apron from around his neck and followed Olivia out of the shop. The next day when Wynn arrived at the office, Kyson was waiting for her out front. Immediately, they set out, and in a matter of minutes, they arrived at the airport. All through the flight, Wynn had butterflies in her belly as she thought about what was about to happen. Meanwhile, Kyson used the opportunity to sleep for the entirety of the flight. When they arrived in South Korea, it was already the day of the conference. After Kyson checked them into their hotel rooms, Wynn barely had enough time to do her hair and makeup before he came knocking on her door, telling her it was time to leave.
Wynn, thank goodness you're here.
Giselle's distressed voice called her name.
I'm sorry to do this, but I have to go with Caspian to greet a Veep, and my dress got wet.
She pointed at the wet patch at her bust area. The dress Giselle wore was adorned with different gems and was absolutely stunning. Wynn looked down at her plain dress.
You want to switch that with this?
She pointed at Giselle's dress, then at hers. Giselle gave an energetic nod of her head as she looked at Wynn with pleading eyes. Donned in Giselle's wet dress, Wynn stood by a corner and watched as Caspian took Giselle by the elbow and walked up to a renowned gemologist. Something grew inside her, making her wish she was the one there instead of Giselle. The dampness of the dress was starting to dry on her body, and the breeze of the air conditioner in the hall made her shiver. She was going to catch a cold at this rate. Wynne tried to ignore everything, the chill, Caspian, and made her way to where a small crowd was gathering. An artisan was explaining her art, and it was fascinating to watch. Lost in the moment, she stood there for an unknown number of minutes when she felt someone tap her arm.
Cool.
Her mouth went shut as she turned. Caspian was behind her this time. Alone, and Wynne's eyes swept the hall to find his girlfriend Gazelle and found her close to the stage, holding a glass of wine as she conversed with another woman.
Wynne.
It seemed Caspian had been saying something, but Wynne hadn't heard anything.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Caspian's face contracted into a frown, and for a few seconds he remained quiet, staring at her. Had she dropped something on her dress? Wynne didn't think so, but she looked down to check anyway.
Do you need me to do something, sir?
His eyes blinked back at her, and he cleared his throat quietly before speaking.
Aren't you cold?
She was, but what could she do about it?
Well, a little.
No sooner had she said that when Caspian started taking off his jacket, Wynne's eyes widened into saucers, and she looked around to see if anyone was watching them. It didn't seem like it.
Sir, what are you doing?
You switched your dress with Giselle. I don't want you to catch a cold because of that,
Caspian said simply and stretched out the hand holding his now removed jacket. Wynne took it from him, stunned. Her mind was coming up with 1,000,001 reasons why he would do this act of kindness. Did he like her? How? Fat chance of that happening. It was probably, as he said, he didn't want her to catch a cold. But didn't that mean he cared about Hal? Maybe even just a little teeny bit? Wynne allowed herself to hope.
God, is Gigi okay?
Caspian was staring at her with a strange expression, and she realized that she must have spaced out again.
Thank you, Casp.
Wynne's hand flew to her mouth.
I mean, Mr. Leroy. Thank you, Mr. Leroy.
Wynne wanted to smack her head. How had she called him by his name instead of Sir? Her mouth was operating faster than her brain.
It's fine, Wynne. You can drop the formalities and call me Caspian.
Warning bells went off in Wynne's head as she watched Caspian walk back to where Giselle was with. He had given her permission to call him by his name, and Wynne was freaking out.
What company are you with?
Wynne's eyes went up as a new voice reached her ears.
Ooh, Leroy Company.
She replied and brought out her ID card, which she showed to the man wearing an usher's uniform and a bright smile.
The jewel display is about to begin, so I would like you to go take a seat.
Wynne looked to the stage, and sure enough, the display was already being set up.
Thank you.
She replied and started moving. Even as her eyes swept the hall for Caspian, she didn't see him, but she found Giselle talking to another person. Giselle was quite the mingler, Wynne noted. As she took her seat, she heard a buzzing sound. She looked at the man seated next to her, but he was looking back at her with a puzzled expression. Why was he looking at her like that? Wynne turned away from him, her hand bumping the side of the jacket when she felt something solid by her side. It was a phone, and it was buzzing. Caspian, she realized, shooting an apologetic look at the man. She got out of her seat and looked around. He wasn't inside. She would check outside then. Maybe he went out for some fresh air. As she came out of the hall, she was greeted by the chill of the night, and she tightened Caspian's jacket around herself as her eyes roamed the street for the man himself. Her gaze went past a karaoke room, a chicken shop, a barbecue restaurant. Wait, her eyes returned back to the barbecue restaurant. Someone had just gone in. She would check if it was Caspian. Wynne crossed the street and entered the restaurant, but there were only a few people in there, and none of them were Caspian.
Can I help you?
The woman behind the counter, speaking unaccented English, asked,
Did a tall man walk in here just now?
The woman, whom Wynne presumed was the owner, laughed, her eyes crinkling beautifully and her lips curving up delightfully.
You might have to be more specific.
Wynne got sidetracked as the woman's face caught her attention. She could have sworn she had seen her before.
Have we met before? You look a little familiar.
I don't think so. You were asking about a tall man.
She reminded Wynne, suddenly remembering why she was in there. Wynne tapped her hand against her lid.
Ah, yes. A tall man, Asian American, missing a jacket, really beautiful eyes, kind of like yours. Did anyone with that description come in here?
The owner's eyes crinkled again, and she asked,
Your boyfriend?
Wynn waved her hands in front of her, simultaneously shaking her head.
I wish, but no. My boss? Can I show you a picture?
When the woman nodded, Wynn took out her phone and pulled up a Google search of Caspian, which she showed to the woman.
Him.
Caspian Leroy?
There was a note of familiarity in her voice, and Wynn tilted her head to look at the woman. She saw that her face had turned an ashy gray.
Do you know him?
Wynn asked. It wasn't as if she was surprised that the woman knew him. Many people knew who Caspian was. However, this woman's reaction was more than that. A gloved hand covered the woman's mouth as she began to sob.
Caspian is in South Korea?
That tone of familiarity again.
How do you know?
Suddenly, Wynn started to put the pieces together. The resemblance she felt with the woman, this was Caspian's mother, and that was confirmed when the woman, removing her hand from her mouth, said,
He's my son.
With a sob, what were the odds of her running into Caspian's mother? Apparently quite high.
Hi. Wow, Mrs. Leroy.
I no longer go by that.
She corrected Wynn.
Samuel, his father, and I divorced a long time ago, and then I came back to South Korea. I haven't seen Caspian since then. I'm sorry for bothering you with all of this.
No?
Wynn shook her head.
It's fine. I would love to hear more.
It was as if she had been waiting for a confidant all this time, because she easily opened up to Wynn. She had been an actress before she married Samuel Leroy. He promised to love and take care of her, but a few years after she bore Caspian, he got tired of her and filed for a divorce. Samuel didn't let her take Caspian and forbade her from making contact with him. At the end of her story, she held Wynn's hands and looked into her eyes, pleading,
I want to meet him. I want to meet my son.
Hours after Wynn left for Korea, Ray was pacing their shared apartment, the wheels in his head spinning. He couldn't bear the thought of Wynn being alone with Caspian. Sure, Giselle would be there, but her relationship with Caspian wasn't real. He also didn't trust Caspian, which was why, the next day, he booked a flight to South Korea. He was going to meet Wynn. On the plane, Ray browsed the internet for the location of the jewelry conference Wynn went for, and by a process of elimination, he was able to find the hotel Wynn was staying at. Have you ever liked someone or something so much that you don't want to let them go? Actually, not want, but can't? That was Ray's situation. He liked Wynn so much, and the thought of her being with someone else was almost enough to drive him insane. The reason he was flying to meet her was to stop her from doing anything insane.
Dear passengers, Pepka Airline welcomes you to Seoul City. The local time is 6:41 p.m. for your safety and the safety of those around you.
After Ray collected his single bag, he took a taxi to the hotel he suspected Wynn to be staying at. What was he going to say to her? He didn't know. He would think of something on the spot. With his best smile, the one that made women notice him, he greeted the receptionist.
I would like to book a room.
Unfortunately, due to the jewelry conference being held nearby, most of our rooms are booked. The only available room is the corner room, which costs.
I'll take it.
Ray interrupted, stretching out his card to her. The receptionist looked flustered, but she quickly found her bearings and accepted his credit card.
Here's your credit card and the key card to your room.
Ray collected it from her, but he wasn't done. Leaning his elbow on the counter, he moved closer to her and whispered,
Can I ask you for a favor?
The receptionist turned to the side to look at her fellow receptionist and giggled.
Yes, sir?
Can I?
Raymond? Raymond?
Not the person Ray wanted to see, but he turned around to see Giselle walking up to him.
What are you doing here?
She stroked his arm excitedly.
Funny how we're running into each other so often these days.
She laughed.
Are you just checking in? Would you like to come to the bar with me?
Ray thought about it. If Giselle was here, that meant Wynn was probably close by. He could ask Giselle for Wynn's room number. With a shrug, he replied,
Sure, why not?
Ray watched Giselle as she swayed on the dance floor, a horde of men watching her with appreciation, and a handful actually daring to approach her. It was time to call it a night. It wasn't as if he hadn't tried to get Wynn's room number from her, but Giselle had immediately started drinking when they got to the bar, and the rest of her time was spent dancing. Shimmying his way to the dance floor, Ray draped his jacket over Giselle's uncovered shoulders and led her out.
What's your room number, Giselle?
There was no reply from her as she bopped her head to imaginary music. but she reached into her purse and brought out a key card. When they got to her room, he put her in bed with a cup of water and some aspirin for when she woke up later, massaging his forehead to chase away the headache that was coming. He exited Giselle's room when he saw a familiar back walking down the hallway. After the day she met Caspian's mother, Win was still thinking of a plan of how to tell Caspian about his mother when he asked Win to escort him to an impromptu party. Apparently, he had asked Giselle to come with him, but the woman told him she wanted to stay back and do her own thing. So, Win was the replacement. It was a dinner party of about 10 people, and mostly they talked about diamonds and jewelry, which might have been boring to other people, but was fascinating to Win. She listened attentively and responded to questions when she could. What surprised her was seeing Caspian interact with the others, and at one point, Win could have sworn she saw him laugh. He was also drinking a lot. While Win hadn't been to a lot of social gatherings with the man, she assumed he wouldn't be the type to let loose over wine. But that turned out to be wrong. Caspian was very chatty when he was drunk. Win soon learned. As they got into the car to go back to the hotel, Kaisen already in the driver's seat, Caspian started to ramble, and about the most random things.
The couch in my office is a little uncomfortable. Kaisen, can you please get it changed?
Caspian's assistant replied,
Yes, sir, sir.
His tone amused as he met Win's eyes in the rearview mirror.
Also, a bed. It might be too much to have one in there, but maybe a small one.
Another?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
From Kaisen. This reminded Win of the day she woke up at Caspian's house. Hiding her mouth behind a hand, she snickered, and this seemed to catch Caspian's attention. He looked at her, his face twisted with confusion, as if he couldn't remember who she was. Suddenly, he snapped his fingers repeatedly.
Win, your wine.
Then he passed out.
Can you handle taking him back to his room?
Kaisen asked once they arrived back at the hotel.
I have to go around to find a parking spot.
Win nodded. It shouldn't be so hard, right? If there were any issues, she could ask any of the hotel staff to help her with it.
Thank you, Win.
It didn't escape Win's notice that Kaisen had dropped the formalities. She faced Caspian, who was wobbling slightly as they stood in front of the hotel's entrance.
All right, Caspian. You're going to have to help me out here. Please don't fall.
Steadily, they moved until they arrived at Caspian's room, and Win could finally let out a sigh of relief as she inserted the keycard in the door, and it clicked open.
Are you going to be okay?
She asked because Caspian was already climbing into bed without her help.
Good night.
She came out of the room, closed the door quietly behind her, and was walking down the hallway to go to her room when she heard her name. Win swiveled around and caught sight of the last person she had expected to see there.
Raymond?
Why was he here? Did he follow her? No, right. And did he just come out of Giselle's room? So many questions, but the words that came out of her mouth were,
Why are you here?
Sightseeing,
came Ray's simple reply, and Win's eyebrows raised in suspicion.
Sightseeing?
Yeah.
He answered, looking anywhere but her face, which made him appear even more suspicious.
Forget about that, Win. I'm going on a tour of Seal tomorrow. Would you like to come with me?
In another time or situation, Win would have said yes, but she already had plans for tomorrow. She was taking Caspian to meet his mother.
No.
She told Ray and walked away, leaving him staring after her in disbelief.
You've been here, 2 days, but you already know a spot?
Caspian sounded amused but also impressed. Winnet had called him out to the lobby, and when she saw he was hungover, she told him she knew of a good place. Caspian wasn't convinced, but he followed her, with Kaisen driving. They pulled over to the barbecue restaurant Win had been to the day before, Caspian's mother's barbecue restaurant. As he was about to open the car door, Win rested a hand on his arm and stopped him.
Caspian, wait.
Turning back to look at her with a confused expression, he asked,
What is it?
When he noticed Win was acting weird, she wasn't meeting his eyes and wet her lips with her tongue like she was nervous.
Actually,
Win made eye contact with Kaisen in the front seat, but the man looked equally as confused. She hadn't thought this through one bit. Mentally, she was hitting her head, but in the real world, she had to remain calm. Well, try to anyway. Last night, as she laid in bed, she called Caspian's mother.
Is it okay if I bring him over tomorrow?
The woman got excited.
Yes, thank you for calling ahead, Win.
If it's possible, you can close the store to other customers, so you'll get to spend quality time with him.
Win suggested.
Yes, yes.
Win could practically hear the woman nodding over the phone.
Thank you, Win.
I'm just glad I can help.
And this brought Win back to the present. Caspian was still staring at her with a confused look, and she realized she had to say something before she scared him.
About the restaurant, I actually have something to say.
Go on.
Caspian gave a nod.
So,
She laughed nervously as she started talking.
funny story. I walked into this restaurant trying to find you and started talking with this woman. It's crazy, but she said she's your mother. And the eyes look just like yours. And she knew everything about your father and you. And she told me a bunch of things.
Win said it all in one breath. She couldn't breathe for fear that she would lose her courage.
Your mother wants to see you, Caspian.
Of all the things Win expected, she hadn't expected to see Caspian's face get red with anger.
Tyson, we're going back to the hotel.
He gritted his teeth and turned away from her. As Kyson made to start the car, Win grabbed his hand, dangerous she knew, and yelled,
No, no.
I've done some.
Caspian ordered with an angry tone, and Kyson looked back and forth from Win and Caspian in confusion.
I'm your boss, Kyson. I'm telling you to drive.
Wait, Caspian. Think about this. I don't know what the whole deal is, but from what your mother told me, you haven't seen each other in years. She tried to take you with her when your father divorced her, but he didn't let her.
Win immediately tried to explain. She couldn't let him leave without seeing her.
Let that one.
Win's face blanched at Caspian's harsh words.
Why do you always meddle in things that are none of your business?
What?
This was her trying to help. He didn't have to be so rude.
You know what? Forget it. Don't see your mother. Regret it for the rest of your life.
And with that, she forced the car door open, got out, and slammed it shut with a resounding thud as she skulked back to the hotel. It wasn't a long distance, just about a 5-minute walk. Win mumbled under her breath as she walked back to the hotel. It wasn't as if she expected him to be over the moon, but she also hadn't expected him to be so rude.
That's what I get for trying to help.
She tapped a folded fist against her temple. When she entered her room back, she immediately went to get her bag and called Raymond. He picked up immediately like he had been waiting for her to call.
What are you doing?
Laying in bed. Why do you sound so annoyed?
Nothing she did ever went past him.
I want to go home.
Then let's.
It was that simple for Raymond. If Win wanted his help, he was going to be there. From the tone of her voice, it sounded like she had an argument with someone.
Do you need some time or do you want to leave right now?
As it would turn out, Gazelle knocked on Win's door and asked her to do something. Hours later, Win and Ray were standing at the entrance of the hotel, trying to flag down a taxi. Her shoulders dropped as she leaned on her suitcase, making Ray worry and wonder if he should ask her what happened. Anyway, this was a good thing for him that Win wanted to leave. They had just gotten into a taxi when Win's phone rang.
You come back to the restaurant, my mom's restaurant.
Caspian?
Ray turned to look at her at the mention of the name.
Yes, all right, I'm coming. Stop the car, please.
Win asked the driver and turned to Ray with an apologetic look. At least she has the decency to look sorry.
Caspian, work.
She said before alighting the car and walking to the restaurant. Caspian's car was still parked out front with Kyson in the driver's seat.
Where's he?
With a nod, Kyson gestured to the back, and Win turned around and saw Caspian come out with his mother.
Sir.
Caspian was mad. More than that, even what gave her the right to think she could just meddle however she wanted.
Sir.
Kyson asked after Win was gone.
Do you want me to drive back or stay?
Guys,
Caspian said at first, then changed his mind.
stay, I'll just be a moment. And,
He said and got out of the car. Smoothing the white polo he had on, he walked into the restaurant. It was empty except for a middle-aged woman behind the counter. She looked like she was expecting him.
Caspian, it's you, right?
As if on cue, her floodgate of tears opened up, and she came out of the counter to meet him. Caspian froze. His hands and legs had suddenly decided to not cooperate with him anymore, his mouth heavy even as he called out.
Oh my.
His mother exhaled a teary laugh and rushed to hug him.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
She switched between that.
I missed you so much.
Caspian didn't say much after that, as his mother took it upon herself to tell him everything she wanted to, about how she missed him, how she had been following up with his word. When she asked him any question, Caspian was able to answer with a yes or no. It wasn't that he didn't have a lot of questions for her, but he couldn't bring himself to ask her any of them except for
How have you been?
At the end of their reunion, they exchanged numbers, and Caspian promised her he would call her when he got back home. As they stood outside the restaurant, Caspian remembered how he shouted at Win, and feeling bad, he called her.
Win, can you come back to the restaurant, my mom's restaurant?
Caspian?
Her surprised voice came over the phone, but she immediately added,
Yes, all right. I'm coming. Stop the car, please.
That made Caspian wonder what she had been doing. A few minutes later, as he came out of the restaurant, he saw her leaning inside the car as she asked Kaisen a question. Then she turned around, and a breathy,
Sir?
escaped her lips. Caspian's mother, on seeing her, hugged her and told her,
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you know any good tourist locations, Kaisen?
When they entered back into the car, Caspian asked his assistants,
Yes, sir. There's. And
Wayne, if you don't mind, I would like you to come with me. Just as a way to unwind, but also to say thank you for getting me to meet my mother.
What?
Winna looked at Caspian, but he was already giving orders to Kaisen on where to go. He wanted to take her out to thank her for what she did. Was it a date? Internally, Win was screaming her head off, and it was a miracle that she wasn't screaming out loud. Caspian was taking her out. Technically, it wasn't a date, but it was kind of similar. Win was going to take whatever she got.
You don't have to.
She remembered to say, even if she didn't mean that.
I want to...
Caspian turned to her, looking into her eyes, and Winna wondered if he saw right through her. They spent the rest of the day together, and when Win got back to her room in the hotel, she felt like she had just been to the moon. A whole day spent with Caspian. Well, Kaisen too. A knock came on her door, and she went to check who it was.
Ray.
Win had completely forgotten about him amidst the day spent with Caspian, and she felt guilty.
I'm so sorry, Ray. Caspian called me for something urgent.
She lied, but was it really a lie?
I thought you would have gone back without me.
Ray moved deeper into her room, looking tired.
The only reason I was leaving was because you said you wanted to.
His tone held a note of accusation, and Win agreed with him. He had every right to be angry.
I'm sorry, Raymond. I'll make it up to you when we go back home.
She would try to anyway.
It's all right. I'm sure it was important.
That made Win feel even worse. While she had been out with Caspian having fun, she left her best friend alone even after he asked her to spend the day with him.
How about this?
She said, pulling Ray down to the rugged floor of the room.
Let's put on our favorite movies and eat junk food, just like back home.
If Ray knew this was what it took for Winna to pay him more attention, he would have done this. A night in with the woman he liked. He wasn't going to turn that down.
Sure.
He replied as he fell to the floor.
But I get to pick the first movie.
Whatever.
The next day, when Winnie woke up alone in her room, her mind went back to spending the day with Caspian yesterday. In the end, everything turned out for the good, and it was time to check out of the hotel. They were going back home today. As she rolled her suitcase in the hallway, she knocked on Gazelle's door. No response. Had she gone down to the lobby? Win wondered as she went to knock on Raymond's door.
What time is your return flight?
10 a.m.
Ray replied. He also had his suitcase packed and ready to go. He had planned it so it was the same time as Win.
I'm going to find Giselle and Caspian, and we can all head to the airport together early.
It was about 8 a.m., locking the door behind him. Ray and Win made their way to the lobby where a small crowd had gathered. Looking closer, she figured out the object of attention. Caspian stood with his hands around Giselle's waist as they answered questions from the fans standing around. Win's shoulders deflated, and she became sad and a little ashamed. Just the day before, spending the day with Caspian, she thought she had felt a spark, but realized she had been wrong, and even felt ashamed for not considering Giselle's feelings. Ray, who was standing close to Win, noticed the change in her attitude and threw an arm around her shoulders.
We can head to the airport first if you prefer.
He offered, putting her feelings into consideration. When Win nodded, Ray led her out of the hotel and flagged down a taxi that would take them to the airport.
Where's Win?
Gazelle asked when she noticed the other woman's absence after the minifan meeting was over.
She already left for the airport with a friend, I think.
Kaisen offered. Caspian had seen her while he and Gazelle were greeting fans. He had seen a man put his arm around her shoulders. which made Caspian think that they weren't just friends. Pushing her out of his mind, his small group also made their way to the airport. Caspian received some disconcerting news on the plane, so when he got back to the country, he immediately went to the company where he summoned Jerry to his office.
Oh, what do you think you're doing?
The other man looked unfazed.
What do you mean, Caspian?
Throwing the file he had received at Jerry, Caspian shot the man a glare.
What did you do behind my back while I was in South Korea? What is this I'm hearing about a new project?
Oh.
Jerry said, as if he just realized what Caspian was on about.
You mean the jewel design contest?
Yes, Jerry, you know what I mean? You didn't get my permission for that.
Jerry leveled a cool gaze at him.
I didn't think I needed to since Samuel already signed off on it.
His dad had given him the go-ahead. Why was he trying to punish Caspian for going to South Korea? Did he know about his meeting with his mother? No, he couldn't.
If that's all, I'll be leaving.
He didn't wait to hear if Caspian would say anything before leaving. After a few minutes, a knock sounded on his door, and Win walked in, holding a file.
Sir.
Tried as he did, he couldn't help the sentence.
You left without us yesterday?
From leaving his lips.
Well.
She looked away from his face.
You seemed like you were busy.
You also seemed like you were busy with your friend.
He said the last word like an accusation, and Win's eyes flew back to his face in surprise.
Forget I said that.
Caspian waved his hand in the air, trying to play it off.
Why are you here?
As if just remembering, Win pushed a file at him.
I need your signature for this.
As Caspian read through what Win gave him, his face twisted into a frown.
Who told you to bring this to me? Give it to Jerry. He's the one in charge.
Win didn't know why Caspian seemed annoyed with her, so she left his office quietly. When she got back to the design department, Jerry summoned her to his office.
About what I asked you to do in South Korea. Don't you have anything to report to me?
Win knew she couldn't tell Jerry all that happened in South Korea if she wanted to keep Caspian's trust.
No, sir.
The company was holding a contest for jewel design.
Anyone can join, right?
Win asked Olivia, and the other woman affirmed.
Are you thinking of joining?
Win gave an excited nod of her head. Her love for diamonds and gems had grown since the jewelry conference, and while she didn't have experience making them, she wanted to try her hand at designing. The worst that could happen was her getting rejected.
I have a couple of textbooks from college that help me. Remind me to bring them for you tomorrow.
At Olivia's words, Win let out a squeal that drew the attention of her colleagues. She shot a sheepish look at them before turning back to Olivia.
I would absolutely love that, Olivia. Thanks for offering.
Be sure to remind me in the evening or I might forget.
You bet.
The next day, Olivia came to the office with a big bag full of books, which she handed to Win.
Here, go through these and I'm sure they'll help you a lot.
Thank you, Olivia.
Win said and started to lug the bag to her desk when Olivia called her back.
About the contest, have you gotten permission from Jerry?
Seeing the confused look on Win's face, Olivia sensed that she hadn't done that.
You're still a newbie, so you might be skeptical, but if you can get on his good side, he'll let you join in.
Win had not known about this. Would Jerry let her participate when she refused to tell him about what went on in South Korea? There was only one way to find out. Moving to his office, she knocked on his door, waiting for him to respond before walking in.
Jerry, I want to ask if I can join.
The jewel design contest? Sure, Win.
Turns out all she needed to do was ask.
Really?
Win's eyes widened with excitement.
Thank you, Jerry. I know I don't have much experience, but I'm willing to learn. Thank you.
Jerry gave a nod, signifying the end of the conversation, and Win left his office. Looking at the books on her desk, she decided to leave early so she could study at home. She didn't have anything else to do at the office. After work, when Win got home, she couldn't wait to share the news with Caspian.
Guess what?
You're traveling for work again?
Raymond asked with a teasing smile, and Win whacked him with a throw pillow.
Be serious, Ray.
He laughed.
What else am I supposed to think, Win? The last time you came home from work this excited, it was for that very reason.
He had a point, but she whacked him again.
What was that for?
He whined playfully.
For being a smartass. Okay, I'll tell you.
Then she explained the design contest and showed him the books Olivia had given her.
Win, that's amazing.
Ray exclaimed as he lifted her and twirled her around for a few seconds.
Stop.
Wynn begged, laughing.
Stop or I'll throw up.
Hearing that, Ray immediately dropped her to the ground.
I know someone who can help.
Wynn stopped on her way to her room.
Someone who can help with your learning.
Ray continued.
Franco is a friend of mine.
Wynn's mouth dropped in astonishment.
Do you mean Franco, the famous gemologist? No way.
He had been at the conference, and Wynn had the opportunity to see some of his works, and they had blown her mind. He was a master of the art of making gems, literally.
No way.
Way?
Ray replied with a smile.
I can ask him to give you some lessons if you like.
His eyes twinkled.
If I like, Raymond, I would absolutely kill for that. Well, I won't, but it would be an honor to learn from him. Please, please, please.
Wynn directed pleading eyes at him. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and she wasn't going to let it pass her by.
All right, Wynn. I'll call Franco.
Right now?
Wynn as eagerly.
No, Wynn.
Ray replied and swatted her away.
Thanks, Ray.
With a laugh, Wynn entered her room with the bag of books, which she placed by the side of her room. She took out one of the books when she remembered she had forgotten to do something.
Wait! The file I was supposed to give Jerry. I forgot it in my bag. Damn it!
Ray, I have to go back to work. I'll be right back, Wynn called out to her friend as she left the house. Hailing a taxi to take her down to the office, Wynn got in, and in about half an hour, she arrived. Luckily, Jerry was still in the office, so she handed the file to him. As Wynn was leaving the company building, she saw Caspian and Kyson standing by a corner and waved her hand in greeting. Hello. Only Kyson gave her a reply, while Caspian looked at her blankly like he was uninterested in what she had to say.
Why are you still at the office by this time?
I came to give Jerry something I was supposed to in the afternoon. The file for the design contest? She said to Kyson, then turned to Caspian. I'm going to help you, Caspian.
Don't bother.
Caspian said coldly and walked inside the company building. This was such a 180 from what happened in South Korea, and Wynn felt hurt seeing her expression. Kyson looked at Winnie with an apologetic smile and tried to explain Caspian's attitude. He's under a lot of pressure and stress. It doesn't justify his behavior, but I hope you understand.
You asking me to do what? Investigate Wynn?
Olivia let out a laugh of surprise.
Jerry, I didn't understand.
Jerry folded his hands in front of him and leaned forward in his chair.
It's just like I said, Olivia. I suspect Wynn of having ulterior motives for this company.
Olivia was taken aback. It had only been a short while since Wynn started working here, but she had been diligent in her work and always willing to learn, and none of the things Jerry was saying about her.
Jerry, what is this about really? You hired Wynn, didn't you?
Jerry sighed. He really didn't want to go about taking Caspian down this way, but he saw no other option. He had the CEO position in his sights, and even if it meant letting go of some small fries, he would do it. As for Wynn, it wasn't her fault. She was spending a lot more time with Caspian, but Jerry was going to use that for his advantage. Haven't you noticed how Caspian has been singling out Wynn for everything? The conference in South Korea, that should have been someone else, and not an intern. Jerry leaned back in his seat and watched as Olivia's face became conflicted as she thought on his words.
But Caspian has a girlfriend. I don't think Wynn is the type of person go after a taken man.
Olivia tried to defend Wynn based on what she'd seen from her.
You don't really know people, Olivia. She might be putting up a show to fool us all, which is why I need you to look into her. Find out everything you can.
What was this? Olivia wondered as she looked at Jerry's blank face. Even when he was asking someone so serious of her, his face still remained unreadable.
Jerry? Cherry?
She laughed nervously.
I'm not an investigator. What can I possibly find out?
Just as Jerry opened his mouth to reply, someone knocked on the door. He slid her a file and said,
Go through this.
Tucking the file under her armpit, Olivia stood up and moved to go outside Jerry's office, but came face-to-face with Wynn.
Oh, Wynn.
Olivia's voice came out high-pitched.
You're here to see Jerry?
Wynn shook her head, a bright smile on her face.
No, actually, I was looking for you.
Oh.
Olivia started to feel guilty.
What about?
She asked as she closed the door to Jerry's office behind her and walked to her desk.
To thank you for the books you gave me. They've been really helpful.
Wynn said, following behind Olivia. When she got home, Olivia thought about what she was going to do about Jerry's request when she heard the front door click open.
Babe, you're back.
But it wasn't Nathan. There were 4 hefty men in the sitting room, and they definitely didn't look like they were here for any good.
Who are you? What do you want?
Olivia considered running into the room to get her phone, but the men seemed to sense that, and one of them immediately grabbed her. Knowing she wouldn't be able to get free from their hold, she didn't struggle. Another one of the men, seemingly the leader of the group, having a deep scar across his right arm, leaned forward and took Olivia's chin in his hands and started to squeeze. Olivia winced, but bit back the pain.
What do you want? We don't have any money, please.
Where's your boyfriend? Nathan. How did they know him? Were they here for him? These thoughts ran through Olivia's mind.
He's out with friends.
Sure about that, princess? If we look through your room, are you sure we won't find him hiding like a coward?
Yes.
Olivia cried out as the man with the scar twisted her chin harder. The man holding her tilted his head, and the other 3 men took the hint and began searching the other rooms. Their conclusion was that Nathan wasn't in the house. Listen, princess, let your little boyfriend know when he comes back that his debt is due. We'll be back and he better have the $200,000 he owes us ready. What did they mean? $200,000? Olivia shook her head in disbelief. No way. He didn't tell you about it? The man laughed. Well, your little boyfriend has a gambling problem. Bet you didn't know about that either. He has 2 days to pay back, or we'll have to collect the debt some other way. To pass across his point, he licked his lips and leered at Olivia before letting go of her. See you later, princess. Olivia was still on the floor, shaking. When Nathan got home hours later, when he tried to touch her, she screamed until he moved away.
I'm sorry, Olivia.
He whispered as she stood up and walked into their room. Their now scattered room. The next morning, bright and early, she made her way to work. Her hand still shook and heart was racing, but she would rather not be home if the gangsters decided to show up again unexpectedly. Also, she had to find a way to get the money.
Olivia, your face.
Wynn is shocked to see the state Olivia is in. She was the only other person in the office as none of the others had arrived.
What happened?
All the emotions from last night swelled up in Olivia, and she began to cry and speak incurrently as she explained what happened to Wynn.
And what did your boyfriend say?
Wynn asked as she stroked Olivia's back.
I don't know.
Olivia blew her nose noisily into a tissue.
I couldn't care less what he has to say, Wynn. Where the heck are we supposed to find that money?
Wynn thought about it, and she wanted to help Olivia any way she can.
I have some savings, Olivia.
No, I can't.
Olivia cried even harder.
I can lend it to you, Olivia. I want to. I can get you the full amount by tomorrow.
Thank you, Wynn. I promise I'll try to pay you back as soon as I can.
Take your time.
Wynn said and enveloped the woman into a hug, stroking her back.
It will all turn out fine at the end.
The next day at work, Olivia unexpectedly heard Jean and Michelle talking about her. She didn't know the details of their conversation, but she heard them mention her name and laugh.
Wynn, eh?
Olivia went to meet Wynn and confronted her.
I get that you're helping me and I appreciate it, but that doesn't give you the right to tell other people something I told you in confidence.
Wynn was confused. She hadn't told anyone about Olivia's situation, not even Raymond, and he was her best friend.
I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia. I swear I didn't tell anyone.
Forget it,
Olivia said in anger and walked off. When Olivia got home from work that day, Nathan was about to go to the casino to pay back the gambling debt, and she didn't want him to go alone. What if the gangsters did something to him?
I'm coming with you.
Olivia told her boyfriend, and he didn't try to fight it. Maybe he wanted her there with him. The taxi ride there was silent. When they got to the casino, they were immediately escorted to the bar where 3 men were seated, drinking. Olivia recognized them as the gangsters who had come to the house the other day. Boss, they're here. Well, look who the cat dragged in. The man with the scar on his hand laughed as he stood up from the bar stool, walking to where Nathan and Olivia stood, stretching out the suitcase full of money. Nathan said with eyes lowered,
I've come to pay the money back. Sorry it took so long.
If possible, he wanted to hand over the money and get out of there. It had been a bad idea to bring Olivia along with him, but he didn't want to be alone with them. The scarred man seemed to find this funny because he laughed and threw an arm around Nathan's shoulder. Why are you so wound up? He clapped Nathan's back with a boisterous laugh and said to another of the men who was bald, "Collect the suitcase and count the money." Olivia stood to the side as she watched this happen. She was ready to leave. The trauma from the day they came to ransack her house was still present, so being in their presence terrified her, but she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing that. "Boss, it's complete. $200,000. After a few minutes, the bald man called out,
Now, can we go?
The scarred man laughed again and took his hand off Nathan's shoulder. As Nathan and Olivia were almost at the door, the man called them back. Not so fast. What about the interest? Nathan turned around with an accusing but fearful glare.
We agreed there was no need to pay interest.
Again, the boss found this funny and laughed for almost a minute. Then he leveled Nathan with an amused gaze. "You see, your first mistake was trusting the words of a gangster. But listen, because I'm in a giving mood, you don't have to pay back the money in cash." At that, he looked behind Nathan at Olivia with a leer. "Good to see you again, princess." He hooked a finger at her to come closer. Olivia shivered as goosebumps appeared on her arms. It had been a bad idea to come here, she thought, but moved closer. "Don't worry, we're not savages. We just want you to have a few drinks with us. Don't we, boys?" the boss asked, and the two other gangsters in the room burst into laughter. "Come on now." Moving forward slowly, as Olivia got to where the man stood beside Nathan, he took her face in his hands and leaned forward, exhaling a vile breath.
We will pay you the interest in cash, whatever it is.
She told him, "Is that so?" The boss was amused, but he simply said, "Boys," and the two other men moved toward Nathan and began to throw punches at him. Olivia watched, horrified, as her boyfriend fell to the ground, groaning in pain. "This doesn't have to happen," the gangster boss said. "All you have to do is have a few drinks with us." Olivia knew she said she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear, but tears fell down her face as she watched Nathan writhing on the ground. They would kill him if they didn't stop soon.
Fine. Stop it. Stop it. Please.
She cried out.
Stop hurting him. I'll do what you want.
An ugly smile appeared on the boss's face. "Good." Then he led her to a bar stool and pushed a glass full of alcohol in front of Olivia. "This is going to be fun." A couple of minutes and a few glasses later, Olivia had had enough.
I can't drink anymore.
She looked at the scarred man sitting next to her, and he laughed.
Olivia, are you okay?
She opened her mouth to respond to her boyfriend when she felt the sudden urge to throw up.
Restroom? Where?
The ever-amused boss pointed in a direction, and Olivia, with her hand over her mouth, ran to throw up. Olivia leaned over the sink with a blare. As she threw up the alcohol she had drunk, as she rinsed her mouth, her pocket started to buzz. Olivia reached in and took out her phone. The caller read Win. Why was she calling her?
Olivia! Hey?
Win's voice came over the phone.
Did you leave work early? I was looking for you. I wanted to see you, to tell you I really didn't tell anyone about your issue. I'm sorry.
Being forced to drink plus being reminded of Win's betrayal made Olivia mad, and a plan began to bloom in her mind.
Are you really sorry?
What?
Win sounded taken aback, but she quickly said,
Yes.
Then you can make it up to me right now.
Olivia called out the name of the casino.
If you're really sorry, come to this location right now. I'll be waiting for you.
In a few minutes, Win was in a taxi, headed to the location Olivia told her. She hadn't betrayed Olivia, but she was willing to do anything to make the other woman less angry. When she got there and told the guard at the door she was there to see Olivia, Win was escorted to the bar. She had no idea why Olivia wanted to meet at a bar, but Win's instincts told her something was wrong. That suspicion was confirmed when she saw Olivia sitting next to a man with a large scar on his hand. Another man was on the floor. When Olivia saw Win, she stood up from the bar stool and rushed toward her.
Winnie, you actually came.
In all honesty, Olivia hadn't actually expected Win to show up as it was late at night. Pointing at Nathan, who was still on the floor, Olivia said,
This is my boyfriend, Nathan.
Then, indicating the scarred man, she added,
This is my friend.
The two other men had left a few minutes ago. Win's eyebrow raised in suspicion from seeing the man on the floor to the scarred man. She had a feeling Olivia was in danger because Olivia wouldn't meet her eyes. The princess has a really pretty friend. The man with the scar said laughingly, Why don't you come have a seat? Have a few drinks too. Win inched closer to them, still unsure but not having a good feeling about it. The scarred man pushed a drink in front of her. The last thing on her mind was drinking. After the 2 experiences she had, she was going to heed Raymond's words to not drink in front of anybody but him. She picked up the glass and twirled it around as if contemplating whether to drink it or not, when she saw, out of the corner of her eye, Nathan, Olivia's boyfriend, getting up from the floor. He met Win's eyes, and she immediately could tell he wanted her to keep the attention of the scarred man. Win gave him a nod.
What do I get in return for drinking this?
She batted her eyes at the scarred man, and that seemed to work in keeping his attention. He laughed as he picked up a glass of his own and clinked it against Win's. Looking ahead, Win saw that Nathan had picked up a glass bottle, and at that moment, she threw her drink in the scarred man's face, just as the bottle in Nathan's hand came crashing down on his head. Grabbing Olivia's hand, Win yelled,
"Run!"
After about 5 minutes of running, the 3 of them finally stopped to catch their breath. They hadn't looked back to see if anyone was chasing them, but it didn't seem like anyone was. Win, panting hard, looked at Olivia.
Are you okay?
Sorry for dragging you into my mess again. I didn't think you would come.
Win's face went blank. She knew that Olivia still thought she had betrayed her and didn't try to explain herself.
That's all right. If you both are fine, I'll catch a cab home. See you at work tomorrow, Olivia.
At work the next day, Win was inside a stall in the restroom when John and Michelle walked in. They didn't seem to know someone else was in there.
What's up with her face?
Michelle's deep voice asked Jean.
Who?
Jean asked.
Olivia?
At that, they both snickered.
Maybe her boyfriend hits her.
Michelle whispered, and the 2 women burst into laughter and exited the restroom. Win knew she should just let it go. It wasn't as if Olivia would be grateful if she stood up for her, but it wouldn't be the right thing to do. Rushing out of the restroom, she stopped the 2 women.
You shouldn't talk about people behind their backs.
John and Michelle stopped and turned around.
What the heck, Win? You were in there? Why didn't you say anything?
Apologize for what you said about Olivia.
Win, with her hands folded in front of her, told them
You really shouldn't gossip about people.
You bitch.
John yelled and raised her hand to hit Win when another voice interrupted.
What's going on here?
They all turned around to see Caspian standing there. When nobody said anything after a while, he asked again.
My song type, Winnie, Moe, go and talk. Win?
Just a minor altercation.
Win said with her head bowed. It was embarrassing that Caspian was seeing her in this position. Caspian turned a look of disappointment and turned to the 2 other ladies involved.
Jean? Win? Care to elaborate on what happened?
With a glare for Win, Michelle shook her head.
Nothing happened, Mr. Leroy.
Nothing. This is a professional establishment. Can we refrain from yelling profanities? John, Michelle, this is going on your official record, and if it ever happens again, you'll be let go. As for you, Win, you know better. And where's Jerry in all of this?
Bye, Anna. Bye, Luke.
Win waved to her friends and picked up her bag. The office was almost empty. She had to stay back because of some extra work, as well as Anna and Luke. Pulling out her phone, she dialed Raymond's number. After the events of yesterday, she had asked him to come pick her up from work because she was still a little scared.
Where are you?
His reply came,
I'll be there in 5 minutes. You can wait in the parking lot.
All right.
Win made her way downstairs to wait for Raymond. After what happened with Jean and Michelle in the morning, Olivia had come to meet her and paid back the money Win had lent her with the words,
Next time, don't defend me. I don't want to be indebted to you.
Rocking her feet, Win tightened her coat against herself as the cold of the evening blew in the parking lot. Hey lady, come over here. The smile left Win's face as she looked up from watching cute videos on social media to see a group of masked men dressed in black approaching her.
Who?
By their poses and the bats in their hands, Win concluded that they were definitely not there for a friendly visit. She turned around and started to run when she lost her footing, fell, and hit her head against the ground. Wincing, she crawled backward as fast as she could, but the masked men were about to catch up with her.
Go in, get in.
A yellow car pulled up beside her, and she recognized it as Caspian's. He pushed open the front passenger door and waited. In pain, Win managed to drag herself into Caspian's car.
Are you all right?
Win looked at Caspian in a new light. If he hadn't shown up at that moment, who knows what those gangsters would have done to her.
Thank you, Caspian.
gangsters after her. In the span of days, she had experienced so much more excitement than ever before. This was Wynn's thought as her eyes began to feel heavy. The next thing she knew, Caspian was calling her name.
I brought you to my house.
She looked around and found she was lying on a couch in what looked like the living room.
I'm sorry for being a burden to you.
She apologized and tried to get up, but winced when she felt a pounding in her head. Caspian put out a hand to stop her.
Don't move. Did you hit your head when you fell?
I think so. Where's my phone? My friend Ray was supposed to come get me at the office. He might be worrying because he hasn't seen me.
Hey, don't worry about that. I already spoke to him and explained what happened. I told him I would bring you to my house.
Wynn's eyes widened at the revelation. Caspian had spoken to Ray.
And what did he say?
He said it was fine, and he was going back to the hospital.
Oh, all right.
Wynn was grateful Caspian was helping her, but she was worried about how Ray would react. He hadn't been too pleased the last time she was at Caspian's house. Bells went off in her head. She was in Caspian's house again.
Thank you.
It's fine, Wynn. Also, about the gangsters back in the parking lot, what's going on?
Wynn didn't meet his eyes. She had a feeling they had been sent by the man Olivia's boyfriend owed money, but she couldn't tell Caspian this.
I don't know. I think it was a random attack.
She looked back at him and saw he was staring at her with an intense expression. What was that about?
I went and sleep if you need to. I'll be in my room working.
Receiving permission from Caspian was all Wynn needed for her to drift off again. When she woke up, Caspian was standing with his back turned to her. How long had he been standing there? Also, had he changed clothes?
Caspian.
Her throat was dry. Wynn realized.
Hey, Saib, run.
Caspian turned around.
I wasn't gonna wake you. I have somewhere to be right now, but I want you to stay here. A client flew in from South Korea, and I can't keep them waiting.
Caspian explained. Turns out, he had wanted to leave a note for when she woke up. He didn't expect that she would wake up before he left.
Mom?
Wynn nodded and slept off again. The third time she woke up, she got up to look for his kitchen to drink some water. Her tummy's grumble reminded Wynn that she hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. She went back to the living room and looked around. The last time she was here, she hadn't been able to see everywhere, not that she had to, but it was nice to have an idea of the conditions Caspian lived in. There were about half a dozen pictures on the wall, most of them of Caspian. A particular picture caught her attention. It was one of three people: Caspian, his father Samuel Leroy, and a familiar face, Jerry. Wynn looked at the picture. Confused, her tummy began to grumble again, so she decided to call Caspian.
Hello?
The voice was female, definitely not Caspian.
Hello, Wynn. I know it's you. Do you need me to get Caspian?
Why was Gazelle answering Caspian's phone? Were they together?
Hello, Gazelle. I called to ask him something, but if he's busy, I can wait till tomorrow.
Wynn hung up before Giselle could reply. How stupid could she be? She was in the house of a man who had a girlfriend. This wasn't fair to Gazelle. With that thought, Wynn picked up her bag and phone and walked out of Caspian's house. After the meeting with the client from South Korea, Caspian stopped by a deli to get something to eat. Since he didn't stock his freezer often, Wynn wouldn't have found anything to eat.
Sorry, I'm late.
The lights were off. Caspian noticed. Was she asleep? He wondered as he took off his shoes by the door and walked into the living room. Everywhere was also eerily quiet. Did Wynn leave already? Just as he was pondering over that, his doorbell rang. It must be Wynn, Caspian thought as he opened the door.
Ed!
Why was his father here by this time? Without replying, Samuel Leroy pushed past Caspian and walked into the living room.
I won't be staying long.
Samuel said as he took his seat.
I know you met your mother.
Caspian's eyes raised in shock.
Oh, what?
I know you went to meet that woman, which is why I'm here to tell you that if that ever happens again, I'll take you off every project that has to do with the company and put Jerry in charge. You don't want that, do you?